The date is April 4th, 2024, and inside a quiet office in London, a woman who had worked for the royal family for nearly 20 years is being told, politely but firmly, that her services are no longer required. No cameras, no press release, no warning, just a single conversation, a signed document, and the soft click of a door closing behind her. Her name is Annabel Elliot. She is Queen Camilla's older sister, and the man who has just removed her from one of the most powerful decorating and property roles in the entire royal portfolio is not King Charles. It is his son, Prince William. What you are about to hear is the story of how, in a matter of hours, the future king took a quiet blade to the machinery Camilla had spent 2 decades building around herself. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why insiders now believe Camilla's entire future, her homes, her income, her comfort, and her survival within the family after Charles is gone, sits in the palm of one man's hand. And before we go any further, hit subscribe, because this story is only beginning, and the pieces that come next will leave you speechless. Let's rewind just briefly to understand the weight of what happened. The Duchy of Cornwall is not just an estate. It is a private empire. Founded in 1337 by Edward III for his eldest son, it spans more than 130,000 acres across England, from Cornish coastline to Dartmoor moorland to prime London real estate around the Oval Cricket Ground. It generates, in a strong year, more than £20 million in annual surplus. It owns farms, forests, holiday cottages, entire villages, a prison, and pockets of some of the most valuable land in the country. And for 15 years, from 2005 until Elizabeth's death in September 2022, this empire belonged to Charles. Camilla, quietly, learned every corridor of it. She learned the tenants, the estates, the auctioneers, the interior designers, the private valuations. She learned, in short, where the money lived. And when she needed someone she could trust to shape the aesthetic of the properties, to choose the fabrics, the furniture, the color palettes, the paintings on the walls, she turned to the one person in the world who shared her taste and her blood. Her sister, Annabel. For 20 years, Annabel Elliot ran an interior design consultancy that quietly and lucratively served the duchy. Her firm was paid hundreds of thousands of pounds over the years for its work on royal properties. She styled the cottages, refreshed the manor houses, redecorated the private residences. She was, in the words of one royal watcher, the invisible hand that gave the duchy its Camilla-approved warmth. And here's the part nobody expected. On the very day William formally took ownership of the duchy, the contract with Annabel's firm was quietly terminated. Not renegotiated. Not scaled back. Ended. Think about that for a moment. 20 years of access, 20 years of income, 20 years of influence, gone in a single administrative signature. And it wasn't done by an accountant, or by a courtier, or by a distant office. It was done by the son of the man Annabel's sister had married. Now William's team framed it in the language of modernization. A statement about efficiencies, about consolidating design work in-house, about a fresh direction for a new Prince of Wales. Clean, corporate, bloodless, but those who understand the internal politics of the family read the move differently. Because Annabel wasn't just a supplier. She was a symbol. She was the softest, most personal expression of Camilla's reach inside the duchy. And by removing her, William was sending a message that nobody inside the palace could misread. This is mine now, not ours. Mine, to understand why William would move so quickly and so quietly, you have to understand the years that came before. Because William has watched Camilla's rise from the very beginning, from the earliest whispers of her existence, through the pain of his mother's public collapse, through the years when Diana called Camilla by the coldest of names, through the funeral, through the remarriage, through the coronation. William was there for all of it. He has been polite. He has been dutiful. He has stood beside her at weddings and christenings and state banquets. But politeness, insiders say, is not the same as trust. And the moment the duchy passed into his hands, something long held quietly released. Now here's where it gets even more chilling. William didn't just remove Annabel. He began, according to sources close to the estate, a full review of every arrangement Camilla had touched. Every contract, every consultancy, every soft money agreement that had been signed under Charles's watch. He wanted to know who was on the payroll, who was on retainer, who had been given favorable leases, and why. He wanted, in the words of one source, a clean sheet. And the reason for that is something people rarely say out loud, but the Duchy of Cornwall is not the only inheritance William is preparing to take. Because when King Charles eventually passes, and the crown moves to William, everything shifts, not just the throne, not just the ceremonial titles. Everything. The Duchy of Lancaster, worth around £650 million, will move to William. Balmoral and Sandringham, held in private trust by the monarch, will pass to William. Windsor, the working heart of the modern monarchy, will be his to command. And crucially, the homes Camilla currently lives in, the ones she treats as her own, the ones filled with her furniture and her sister's taste and her private memories, will not, in the end, belong to her. They will belong to him. Stay with this, because this is the part that changes the entire story. Camilla currently has access to two properties she considers home. There is Ray Mill House, the private country home in Wiltshire that she bought herself after her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles in 1995, before she ever became a duchess or a queen. That house is legally hers. Nobody can take it from her. But then there is Clarence House, the elegant London residence she and Charles occupied for years. And there are the private apartments and grace and favor arrangements tied to the wider royal estate. There is Highgrove, the beloved Gloucestershire home Charles has poured decades of his life into, its gardens designed by his own hand. Highgrove is on duchy land, which means Highgrove now belongs, functionally, to William. Ask yourself something. What happens to a queen consort when the king dies, when the son inherits everything, and when the son has spent years quietly filing away every grievance, every slight, every wound inflicted on his mother's memory? What happens when the woman who was once the most controversial figure in modern royal history finds herself dependent, entirely dependent, on the goodwill of the boy who watched his mother cry? That is the question palace insiders are now asking. And the answer, they say, is that Camilla knows exactly what is coming. If you've made it this far, hit like and drop a comment telling me who you think holds the real power in this family now. Because the answer might not be who you think. Because here is the thing about William. He does not shout. He does not leak. He does not brief the papers the way his father's people have been known to. He works, as one former courtier put it, in silence. He gathers. He waits. He acts. And when he acts, it is precise. The dismissal of Annabel Elliot was not an outburst. It was a signal. And Camilla's family, according to those monitoring the internal dynamics, is furious. Because for 2 decades, the Parker Bowles and Shan families, Camilla's blood, have quietly moved closer to the center of British royal life. Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, a food writer, has enjoyed a rising public profile. Her daughter, Laura Lopes, and her children have appeared at coronations and state occasions. Annabel's dismissal is not just about one contract. It is about a message being sent to an entire family, a message that says the era of quiet expansion is over. The line William is drawing is being drawn with a very steady hand. And the men in gray, the courtiers who have run the machinery of the monarchy for generations, are watching all of this with the intensity of people who understand that a new king is being built in real time. Let's pause here, because to understand what William did on that April day in 2024, you have to understand what it means for him personally. William was 13 years old when Diana gave her infamous Panorama interview in November 1995. 15 when she died in the tunnel in Paris, 22 when his father married the woman his mother had once called the third person in the marriage. Every step of Camilla's rehabilitation, from the wedding at Windsor in 2005 to the granting of the title Duchess of Cornwall to the eventual Queen Consort and finally Queen, has taken place with William standing quietly to the side. Watching, nodding, smiling for the cameras, saying nothing. But those who know William say that silence has never meant approval. It has meant patience. Now here's the part that royal watchers keep circling back to. When Elizabeth II died on the 8th of September 2022 at Balmoral, the succession of properties and titles moved with a speed that surprised even seasoned observers. Within days, William was Prince of Wales. Within weeks, the paperwork for the duchy transition was in motion. And within 18 months, the first quiet blade had fallen on Annabel Elliott's contract. That is not chaos. That is choreography. And Camilla, who has spent her entire life understanding the choreography of British power, would have known exactly what was happening. There is a scene described by a source familiar with the family's private conversations of Camilla receiving the news about her sister. It is said she was at Ray Mill in her own house, on her own land, when the call came. She listened. She did not react immediately. She said quietly only one thing. He didn't even tell me himself. Think about the weight of that sentence. He didn't even tell me himself. Not the king. Not Charles. William, the stepson, the heir, the boy who used to sit beside her at family lunches. He didn't pick up the phone. He didn't drive out to see her. He sent, according to those familiar with the matter, a formal notification through the appropriate legal channel. Clean, cold, correct. That is how empires change hands. And here's where the story takes a turn nobody expected, because in the weeks that followed, Camilla did not fight back. She did not leak. She did not brief. She did not push her allies in the press to run defensive stories. She went quiet. Very, very quiet. She attended engagements. She smiled at cameras. She stood beside Charles at Easter services. And she said nothing, publicly or privately, about the sister who had just been shown the door. Royal watchers who have followed Camilla for decades say this is the most telling detail of all. Because Camilla, unlike so many others in this family, is not sentimental about power. She understands it. She respects it. She has spent her whole life around men who wielded it. And she understands that the man who now controls the Duchy of Cornwall will one day control her home, her comfort, her income, her placement at royal events, her security detail, her access to the family, and, in the coldest sense of the word, her future. She will not fight William, because she cannot afford to. Ask yourself something. When you have spent 40 years fighting to be accepted by a family, to be tolerated by a public, to be crowned beside the man you love, and then a single stroke of a young man's pen reminds you that all of it, every inch of it, is provisional, what do? You do exactly what Camilla is doing. You smile. You show up. You send flowers. You wait. And you hope. Because here is the reality of the modern monarchy that few people talk about. The Queen Consort has no independent estate of her own inside the Crown's private machinery. She has her personal home. Yes. She has her own money. Yes. But the ceremonial life, the palaces, the staff, the security, the grandeur, all of it flows from the monarch. And when the monarch changes, the flow can be redirected or cut off entirely. There is precedent for this that palace historians are quietly reminding people of. When George VI died in 1952, his widow, the Queen Mother, remained a central figure in royal life for another 50 years, adored by the public, indulged by her daughter Elizabeth, given her own household, her own homes, her own budget. She lived until she was 101, and until the very end, she was treated with the tenderness of a national grandmother. But that arrangement worked, because Elizabeth adored her mother. She defended her. She protected her. She poured resources into her comfort without hesitation. Now ask yourself, does William feel that way about Camilla? The honest answer, according to those who know him, is no. Not because he is cruel, not because he is vengeful, but because he is his mother's son. And there is a limit, insiders say, to how much warmth he can generate for the woman who, in his private memory, will always be linked to his mother's darkest years. Which brings us to Kate. Because you cannot understand the future of Camilla's position in the royal family without understanding the woman who will one day be Queen Consort in her place. Catherine, Princess of Wales, is, by every account, unfailingly polite to Camilla. She curtsies correctly. She defers publicly. She has never, in more than a decade of royal life, said a word out of place. But those who have watched the two women together at family events say the warmth is measured. Controlled formal, Kate is, in temperament, closer to Diana than to Camilla. She is close to her own family, the Middletons, in a way that echoes the closeness Diana had with the Spencers. And when Kate becomes queen, the emotional center of the monarchy will shift, gently but unmistakably, away from Camilla and her circle. That is the future Camilla is staring into, and the removal of Annabel Elliot was, in a very real sense, the first tangible sign of that future arriving. Because here is the thing about the Duchy of Cornwall. It is not just money. It is patronage. It is the ability to hire your sister, to place your friends, to fund your favorite causes, to shape the aesthetic of an entire portfolio of homes according to your personal taste. Charles used it that way for 15 years. He filled it with people he trusted, with charities he loved, with the fingerprints of his own vision. Camilla, alongside him, filled it with the fingerprints of hers. And now, William is systematically removing those fingerprints. One contract at a time. One decision at a time. Not with fanfare. Not with press releases. Just quietly, with the machinery of the estate itself. Staff who have worked in the duchy for decades have described the last 18 months as the most significant restructuring in living memory. New advisors have been brought in. New sustainability commitments have been made public, including William's announcement that the duchy would no longer accept commercial rents from certain community-focused tenants, a move framed as generous, but also, quite deliberately, as a break from his father's model. New leadership. New priorities. A new prince who wants the estate to reflect his vision, not the one he inherited. And every one of those changes is a small brick removed from the wall Camilla spent 20 years helping to build. Here's where the story reaches its quietest, sharpest moment. Because in the months after Annabel Elliot's dismissal, sources say Camilla began, very carefully, to make her own arrangements. She began ensuring that Ray Mill House, her private property, was fully and legally hers, free of any entanglement with the wider royal estate. She began, insiders say, discreetly consolidating her personal wealth, her jewelry, her private collections. She began, in the language of those who understand these things, preparing, not for a war. Camilla is not going to war. She is far too intelligent for that. She is preparing for a widowhood. Think about that for a moment. Somewhere in the private rooms of Clarence House, a queen is quietly making sure that when the day comes, and it will come, she has somewhere to go that no one can take from her, because the palaces will not be hers. The duchy will not be hers. Highgrove will not be hers. The grand ceremonial life will belong to Kate. And William, the boy who watched his mother cry, will decide, in ways big and small, how gently or how coldly the transition unfolds. And this is the emotional truth of the story, that the woman who spent 40 years fighting her way to the top of British royal life is now, at the height of her title, quietly building an escape route to the bottom of a Wiltshire lane, to a house she bought herself in 1995, to the one piece of ground in her entire kingdom that no future king can touch. The palace that built its entire identity on control is no longer controlling its own succession of feeling. The father is old. The son is patient. The stepmother is careful. And the future, as always in this family, will arrive on its own schedule. And the ripple effects are already being felt. Divided loyalties inside the household. Staff who have worked for Charles and Camilla for years quietly asking whether they will still have jobs under the next reign. Charities that were the pride of the current king wondering whether their new patron will keep the flame lit. Contracts being reviewed. Portraits being rehung. A generation of courtiers who built their careers around one couple, watching, silently, as the wind changes. And through all of it, William says nothing publicly. He does not gloat. He does not explain. He does not defend the dismissal of Annabel Elliot beyond the sparse language of the official statement. He simply continues, day by day, decision by decision, to build the shape of the reign that is coming. Because he understands, better than anyone alive, that the crown is not won on the day of the coronation. It is won in the quiet years before, in the paperwork, in the contracts, in the personnel, in the small decisions that outsiders will never see, but that determine everything. And here is the final, lingering question that royal watchers keep returning to. When Charles is gone, and William stands on the balcony of Buckingham Palace as king, and Kate stands beside him as queen, where will Camilla be? Will she be at Ray Mill, in her own house, on her own terms, quiet and dignified and untouchable? Will she be somewhere in the frame of the family, invited but not central, present but not powerful? Or will the woman who spent a lifetime climbing find herself, in the final chapter, gently ushered off the stage by the son of the woman she once was accused of replacing? Nobody knows. Not yet. But those who monitor this family closely say the answer is already being written, contract by contract, decision by decision, inside the walls of a duchy that no longer belongs to her family, and never will again. If you've made it this far, hit like, because stories like this do not stay buried for long, and every week new fragments emerge from behind the palace walls. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because there is one more person in this story we haven't talked about yet. One more figure whose future may be decided not by King Charles, but by King William. And what you'll hear about her next may be even more shocking than what you just heard about Camilla. The wheels of this monarchy are turning, quietly, patiently, precisely. And somewhere tonight, in a Wiltshire farmhouse she bought with her own money nearly 30 years ago, a queen is sitting alone, listening to the wind, and preparing for the day the son of the woman she once wounded finally decides how her story ends.